Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of the Blackbird Grimoire. Welcome back to the daily forecast for Saturday, October 19th, 2024. It is the 28th of Libra and it is the day of ghosts. For our planetary astrology, the sun is in Libra, cardinal air, representing justice. The moon begins the day in third quarter Taurus, fixed earth, representing the need to pursue values. At 2:33 p.m. Central Time, it does go void, of course. At 3:07 p.m. Central Time, it goes into third quarter Gemini, mutable air, representing change. Mercury is in Scorpio, fixed water, representing the spiritual. Venus is in Sagittarius, mutable fire, representing generosity. Mars is in Cancer, cardinal water, which is seeking security. Jupiter is retrograding in Gemini, mutable air, which is to broaden perspective. Saturn is retrograding in Pisces, mutable water, which is to redefine dreams. Uranus is retrograding in Taurus, fixed earth, representing rebellion. Neptune is retrograding in Pisces, mutable water, which is spiritual awakenings. And Pluto is in Capricorn, cardinal earth, representing reconstruction. Now, for our retrograde reminders, for Jupiter, reconnect with your true path. For Saturn, reclaim your authority. For Uranus, reconsider how you rebel. For Neptune, reclaim your magic. And for Chiron, restore the heroic spirit. Our moon phase is a waning gibbous, which means it's time to practice gratitude. Before the Gemini moon, the do's are social events, networking, and teaching. The don'ts are unventilated spaces, slow communicators, and manic distractions. So, on this day of Saturn, we are building up to Samhain. So, this is a time for reflection and it's an opportunity to take a close look at your goals and your mode of being and decide how to best move forward and whether or not these things are in the proper alignment or if there's a need to make adjustments or if what you thought you want as you have come closer to fruition, you've come to realize that really wasn't the thing. Maybe you were living out someone else's dreams. Maybe you were caving to some kind of social pressure for things you thought you had to do. And now you're needing to reassess and really think about, what your purpose in life is and having to do things like that. Another thing you can do is to use the Gemini moon to seek out other perspectives and advice that can inform your personal ruminations, not replace, not direct, but to inform them, to take other perspectives into account because we are not the most objective creatures at the best of time. And when it comes to self reflection, there's no way to be unbiased with where that's regard. So it is good to sometimes get an outside perspective because sometimes we're too easy on ourselves. Sometimes we're too hard on ourselves. Sometimes the way we look within, we have a completely distorted lens. And sometimes by talking to other people, it can help uh, reveal a little bit of clarity that we would not be able to produce for ourselves. So there's that. Now for our tarot, we have the Six of Bats. The six represents being in the middle of something. The suit of bats is the rational masculine, projective energy, the air element, and thought. And the keywords for this card are journey, which is obvious enough because we're in a boat and we're poling along, taking strong action to overcome difficulties. These pumpkin heads and ghosts and whatever else in the boat, they are taking very strong action. They are getting across that lake. They are going from where they were. They're moving towards something. You see the house over there in the distance. And then there's also the promise of better times ahead, that whatever you are leaving, it is quite all right. So I do feel like this is following up on the themes that we've been tracking all this week. Something may have come up that was not good. We had time to mourn over it. We had time to try to bring ourselves to a little bit more. Well, that happened. The question is what's next? And this indicates energy that is ripe for moving forward with it, going ahead, of being willing to, you aren't just willing to have left things behind, you've actually taken action to leave behind the old chapter and to go into the new and to go into it with some enthusiasm, some hope, some saying, possibilities are coming up for me. And those possibilities would never have arisen if I had stayed where I was. So there's a lot of hope in this card. And I don't want to say a sense of stoicism essentially, but I do think an improved sense of perspective. Next up are today's Celtic triad, three arch enemies of humankind: fire, water, and a king. So, out of control fire and unbridled tempers, that can create disaster, and they do on a very regular basis. Then floods and droughts have caused us devastation time and again, and it's the same with people who are either overly emotional or not emotional enough. That also causes devastation wherever people go. And then when it comes to kings or politicians, they have a very long history of bringing people to absolute ruin. There are a few things more important than the character and the sense of loyalty that whoever the head of state is has towards the people. And if that doesn't exist, then of course there isn't going to be good outcomes. I mean, we see that right now. You look at the politicians in office, they're not acting on behalf of your benefit or mine or anyone else's. They are looking after themselves, and a lot of them aren't too bright about how they do that. They might be thinking they're getting some gains, but in the long term, it will be very costly, probably to their actual pocketbooks in the long run. And it goes to show about how there has always been a need for limitations for people in power. There do need to be boundaries for them that are enforced. In the case of kings, we see this through the development of the idea of constitutional monarchy. That it's monarch's job to be of service to the people. They are not there to micromanage anyone. They're not there to necessarily dictate to someone. Their role is to act as a very high level diplomacy and to be constantly reinvigorating that connection between the monarchy and the people. Probably the best example that I see of this is really with the British monarchy. They do go a long way out of their way. I mean, and even the late Queen herself, she always ended her letters with "Your servant, Elizabeth," not "Your Queen," not "Your regnant Queen," not anything else of that. It was a consciousness of that her role was to be of service to her country. And then with politicians, my gods, I tell you what, I mean, just permanent exile is just about too good for some of the people who are currently in office. And they of all people, because they have no special claims of history, all they are people who's like, huh, I think I'd be good at doing this. Now, some come in with honest intentions and get corrupted. Some come in with honest intentions. They don't get corrupted and they get endlessly pummeled for it. And then there are other people who they just saw this as a way to money, fame, and power. And they had very poor character. They have very undisciplined attitudes towards work. And of course, they are completely unprincipled, and it shows. And it is such a betrayal because if you have, any kind of representative democracy or any kind of republic as a government, the idea of the politicians getting hoity-toity notions about themselves is about the biggest betrayal that there is, and that mindset always precedes any kind of bad action taken against the people themselves. So, I mean, what's to argue with this particular triad? I mean, we don't have to test out these ideas. We see them. I mean, these are things that we know instinctively. Then for today's magical correspondences, it's all about forgiveness. The color is blue, the plant is wormwood, the animal's the hummingbird, and the crystal is blue topaz. Now, in paganism, the gods do not mandate that we forgive unconditionally or forgive promiscuously. There's a time and place for retribution, and that's something that our mythos does make clear. So, what do you think the role of forgiveness really plays in a pagan practice? I think this is something that isn't a off the cuff, short, one or two sentence kind of answer, and oh, here's my philosophy on forgiveness. I don't think that's what it is. And I would also encourage people to really look at this from their religious perspective and not from the perspective of pop psychology, which, quite frankly, I think promotes some pretty toxic methods for people to go through life and that do not acknowledge the realities of human relations. So, I would encourage you to give this a really strong think. Maybe use some of these correspondences and with your meditations. Maybe try to reach out to one of your guides and have a really deep think about this. And of course, you don't have to arrive at an immediate conclusion. These things don't have time limits. Next up are practices. If we will have another installment of Popic Magic. Then, what do you observe as being ghost-like in society? How can you cultivate Saturnalian energy? How can the world benefit from Saturnalian wisdom? And it's a spiritual day, so deep meditation to prepare for Samhain is definitely in order. So, we have Pop-Out Magic 3. This will be describing a specific method. And of course, if you would like to kind of snag this yourself, you can either take a screenshot or you can go to the community tab on my YouTube channel and you can find it there. So, the method for this is if you are a beginner, you should use this in conjunction with candle magic. You should also reinforce the spell periodically. You can use any type of material to construct the poppets. Cut two pieces of cloth in the shape of a human figure using the color material that corresponds to the type of magic you wish to perform. So you see, this is already quite versatile. You may use the candle color chart to decide what color you will need, and you can find those charts everywhere on Pinterest. Embroider the poppet to resemble a male or female doll, as the situation allows, then embroider the person's astrological sign on its back. I would recommend doing their big three if you happen to know them. Sew the poppet two-thirds of the way, then stuff with cotton batting the appropriate herbs. Refer to an herbal chart and the possible nail, hair, saliva, or photo of the person you are making the poppet to resemble. You really do need something to specifically tie it to that person. If all else fails, then you should place a piece of paper, a letter, a card, or anything else with the person's handwriting on it inside of the poppet. If you are performing a binding, then place the graveyard dust, ground mullein herb inside of the doll. So, one thing I want to bring up with poppet magic or any other kind of magic, because any form of spell work, it's just a question of method. You have a wide variety of methods to accomplish the same intention. And the natural laws that govern magic, and indeed everything else, they remain constant regardless of the method used. You are not, using a different variety of magic. Magic is magic. You are just using a different method. And that's something that doesn't get emphasized a lot in our circles. And I think it should, because then people could relax. They could just, okay, have this intention. I don't have my means to do it in this one particular way. So I'm going to look at other methods for the same purpose. See how that can take pressure off. So moving on. Our journal prompt. What do you think a pagan funeral should consist of? And funeral customs, I mean, these are things that are, developed organically over a very long period of time. And they always say something about what the people at the funeral actually believe. Excuse me. So look at it from the perspective of your own religious practices, of your own beliefs regarding the afterlife, and just what do you think the proper thing to do is? What different components should the funeral have? And again, this is preparation in case you should ever find yourself being called to act in a more priestly role to officiate a funeral, or if you are wanting to leave behind instructions for when you do shed the mortal coil, as we all will at some point. Just looking at it from what do you think should be done, what do you want to be done, and if possible, try to cast out any thoughts about all the people or all the things that might get in the way of this taking place. Really try to leave that behind, because if ever you are going to break through those chains, it's going to begin with you imagining what the world looks like if you don't have those chains to consider to begin with. So there's a little food for thought. So on that note, I wish you a magical and delightfully spooky day. Have a good one. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.